There's a city that no one alive has ever visited. It has no streets, no buildings, no coordinates on any map. But every single person who has ever lived, your grandparents, Caesar, the first human to walk upright, they all went there. The ancient Greeks had a name for it, the underworld. And in their version, the worst part wasn't fire or punishment. The worst part was this. You arrived as a shadow, a gray, weightless echo of who you used to be. And all you had, the only thing you had, were memories of what you did while you were alive. No new achievements, no new love, no second chances, just what you left behind. Here's what's strange. We're not Greeks. We don't believe in Hades, but somehow, we are all living like we do. Why do we post? Why do we build? Why do we name things after ourselves, write books no one asked for, have children, found companies, carve our initials into trees? The answer is older than civilization, and it's buried deep inside your brain. The answer lives in your neurons, and it might surprise you. Let's start with a number, 108 billion. That's how many humans have ever lived on Earth. And of those 108 billion people with dreams, faces, names, stories, virtually none are remembered today. Think about your own family. How far back can you go? Your grandparents? Maybe great-grandparents? Beyond that, silence. These are people who loved, suffered, built, laughed, completely erased. If that thought doesn't make you slightly uneasy, you might want to check your pulse. Psychologists have a name for the anxiety that drives us to resist this erasure. They call it terror management theory, or TMT. The idea is unsettlingly simple. Humans are the only animals who know with certainty that they will die. And that knowledge is terrifying, so we cope. We build, we create. We attach ourselves to things that we hope will outlast our bodies. In 1973, philosopher Ernest Becker published a book called The Denial of Death. He argued that virtually all human culture, art, religion, politics, the obsession with fame, is one giant, species-wide coping mechanism for the fact that we're all going to die and be forgotten. He won the Pulitzer Prize, posthumously. He died 2 months before the ceremony, and here's the kicker. This isn't a modern anxiety. It goes all the way back. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest story ever written, is literally about a king who goes on a quest to escape death because he's terrified of being forgotten. We've been running from oblivion for at least 4,000 years, but if this fear is universal, why does it feel so personal? The neuroscience is wild. Here's something that will fundamentally change how you think about yourself. Your brain has 2 modes of thinking about time. One is practical, plan for next Tuesday, remember where you left your keys. The other is something neurologists call episodic future thinking, the ability to project yourself into an imagined future and emotionally feel it. This is a uniquely human capacity. Chimpanzees can plan ahead slightly, but no chimp has ever thought, in 100 years, will anyone remember I existed? This capacity for temporal self-projection is the source of our greatest achievements and our deepest existential dread. Because once you can imagine the future, you can imagine a future without you. Studies show that when people are reminded of their own mortality, even subtly like walking past a funeral home, they immediately increase behaviors linked to legacy building. They rate their ambitions higher. They become more generous to causes that will outlast them. They unconsciously start performing for an imaginary audience of the future. You are right now constantly performing for ghosts. But wait. This legacy drive doesn't look the same in every culture, and the differences are disturbing. Terror management researchers have mapped out what they call symbolic immortality, the different strategies humans use to feel like some part of them will persist after death. There are 5 main flavors, and I'd bet money you're using at least 2 of them right now. First, biological immortality, having children, passing on your genes, your name, your stories. This is the oldest strategy in the book, literally encoded in evolution. Second, creative immortality, art, writing, music, inventions, things you made that can exist after you're gone. This is why a poet in ancient Rome named Horace wrote, and I'm not making this up, a poem specifically about how his poem would make him immortal. The poem survived. He was right. Third, religious immortality. Belief in an afterlife, reincarnation, heaven, nirvana. Systems that promise continuity of consciousness beyond death. Fourth, natural immortality. The feeling of merging with something larger, nature, the cosmos, the flow of history. My atoms will become stars. I am part of something eternal. Fifth, and this one is the wildest, achievement-based immortality. Fame, legacy, impact, the desperate attempt to carve your name into history itself. This is the one that drives empires, TED Talks, and your gym selfies. Here's the uncomfortable truth. None of these are rational. Logically, once you're dead, you can't enjoy being remembered. Yet humans consistently sacrifice real, present happiness for the chance at posthumous recognition. Why? Because the brain can't fully separate the imagined future self from the present self. When you imagine people remembering you in 200 years, your brain partially processes that as something happening to you. But here's what the ancient Greeks got right that we've almost entirely forgotten. Back to those shadows in Hades. What's interesting isn't that the Greeks feared death. It's what they thought made death bearable. The Homeric afterlife had a precise economy. The shades who suffered most were those who had done nothing worthy of remembrance. They wandered the banks of the Lethe, the river of forgetting, and drank its waters and lost even their own memories. But the great ones, the heroes, the poets, the founders of cities, they retained their identities. Not because they were good or kind, but because their actions were so significant that they left a permanent imprint on the world of the living. The Greeks had a word for this: kleos, glory. Not fame for fame's sake, but fame as the echo of actions that actually mattered. The Iliad is essentially a 24-book argument that kleos is the only rational response to mortality. Here's the key insight. In the Greek model, what you left behind wasn't just vanity. It was a literal metaphysical anchor. Your earthly deeds were threads that kept your shade tethered to the world. To be entirely forgotten was to die a second death, to dissolve completely. The Roman poet Virgil took this even further. In the Aeneid, the shades who drink from the Lethe willingly forget themselves, because they will be reborn. But those who cling to memory, who refuse to drink, they are the ones who meant something. Oblivion wasn't just death, it was annihilation. Now here's where it gets really strange. The science suggests the Greeks weren't just making mythology, they were accidentally describing a real psychological mechanism. In 2004, two psychologists, Sheldon Solomon and Jeff Greenberg, ran an experiment that became famous. They had two groups of judges review the same case: a woman arrested for prostitution. One group was first asked to think about their own death, to write a short paragraph about what they imagined happening to their bodies after they died. The other group was asked to think about dental pain. The death-primed judges set the bond 8 times higher than the other group. 8 times. Why? Because when you remind people of their mortality, they instinctively reach for symbolic protection. They align harder with cultural values, judge transgressors more harshly, and invest more in the social structures they believe will outlast them. This is the legacy drive in action. Not poetic, not philosophical, raw, biological, measurable. Brain imaging studies show that when people think about their personal legacy, what they'll leave behind, there's strong activation in the default mode network. The same regions involved in social cognition, self-referential thought, and imagining other minds. In other words, when you fantasize about your legacy, your brain is running a simulation of how other people will think about you when you're gone. You are literally hallucinating an audience that doesn't exist yet. And that hallucinated audience, those imaginary future people who will remember you, they are motivating you right now. They are shaping your decisions, your ambitions, what you choose to create. The Greeks built temples to capture the attention of gods. We build Instagram profiles to capture the attention of posterity. Same mechanism, different platform. Here's where everything gets turned upside down. What if the desire to be remembered is actually the thing most likely to make you forgettable? There's a concept in psychology called identity foreclosure, when you lock onto a fixed image of yourself so rigidly that you stop growing. And research on people obsessed with legacy suggests something disturbing. The more consciously you pursue being remembered, the more you become a brand instead of a person. Think about the people throughout history who were most desperate for immortality. The pharaohs who built pyramids, the emperors who erected statues of themselves on every street corner, the 19th century industrialists who put their names on everything they touched. What do we remember about them? Usually just the name. The person behind it has dissolved. They got their immortality. But it's the immortality of a logo, not a soul. Now think about the people whose work has genuinely lasted across millennia. Socrates, Mozart, Archimedes. Here's what's fascinating. Virtually none of them seemed primarily motivated by legacy. Socrates refused to write anything down. Mozart wrote music because he couldn't not write it. Archimedes reportedly ran naked through the streets, yelling about fluid displacement, not about how posterity would remember him. The paradox is brutal. The people who tried hardest to be immortal are the ones we remember least as people. And the ones who were most fully alive in the present are the ones who couldn't be forgotten. There's a word for this in Japanese, ikigai, roughly. The thing that makes you jump out of bed in the morning. Not the legacy you're building, the process itself. And the neuroscience backs this up. Studies on deathbed regrets consistently find the same patterns. People rarely say, "I wish I had built a bigger legacy." They say, "I wish I had been more present. I wish I had connected more deeply. I wish I had been less afraid." The shadow in Hades that suffers most isn't the one that was forgotten. It's the one that was never fully there. So what do you actually do with this? The answer is more specific and stranger than you'd expect. Knowing about terror management theory changes something. Not because you can turn the fear off, as you can't, but because you can choose which immortality project to invest in. Here's a practical framework. Call it the 3-layer test. Before you commit to a major ambition, ask, which layer is this coming from? Layer 1, anxiety layer. Are you doing this primarily because you're terrified of being forgotten? This is the danger zone. Anxiety-driven legacy projects are exhausting, fragile, and usually hollow. They're the ones that collapse when the external validation stops. Layer 2, meaning layer. Are you doing this because it connects to something genuinely significant? A problem worth solving, a beauty worth creating, a person worth helping? This is solid ground. Layer 3, flow layer. Are you doing this because when you're doing it, time disappears? Because the process itself is absorbing? This is the rarest and most durable motivation, and the one most associated with work that actually lasts. Most real projects live in layer 2 or 3. Most burnout and creative paralysis comes from spending too long in layer 1. Here's the second insight. The Greeks were partly right. The things that survive aren't the things that were built to survive. They're the things that solved a real problem, captured a real truth, or created real beauty for someone who was alive when the creator was alive. Your legacy is not a monument you build. It's the residue of actually showing up. There's a concept called the ripple effect. The idea that every genuine act of creation or connection creates concentric circles of influence that expand invisibly beyond what you can ever trace or measure. Most of the most important things any person has ever done for human civilization will never be attributed to them. That teacher who changed your direction, that stranger who said the right thing at the right moment, that inventor whose name you don't know, but whose idea is embedded in something you use every day. Oblivion is not the opposite of legacy. It might actually be its purest form. We started in the underworld, 108 billion shadows, each carrying the only currency that worked in that place, the weight of what they did while they were alive. And we've traveled through evolutionary biology, ancient poetry, psychology experiments, neuroscience, and Japanese philosophy to arrive here. The fear of oblivion is not a flaw, it's a feature. It's the engine that built civilization. But like all engines, it can run you into the ground if you're not paying attention. The question isn't, will I be remembered? The question is, am I actually here? Fully, attentively, Creating, connecting, solving. Not for the imaginary audience of the future, but for the very real people in front of you right now. Because here's what I think the Greeks were really saying. Beneath all the mythology, the only way to become a shadow that matters is to be a person who was fully lit while they were alive. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Not, what will you leave behind? But, what are you too afraid to make because you're afraid it won't be remembered? That thing. Make that. If this video shifted something in how you think about legacy, hit like. It tells the algorithm something was worth watching. Subscribe if you want to go deeper into the science of what makes us human. And the next time you're down a rabbit hole at 2 a.m., wondering if any of this matters, come back. We'll keep going.